Buongiorno! Why am I in my kitchen in my apron? Well, because music and cooking go hand in hand. Hi, I'm Dayna, and this is Dayna's Music Notes. Alright, I've got my hair up and ready to get down to business. So as you know, music is a love of mine, gardening is another love of mine, but a third one is cooking. And I love the show Top Chef, and last season they had a conductor on there. I wrote down his name so I could get it right, conductor Gustavo Dulcinel. And I also wrote down his quote, "Every instrument sounds different, but in an orchestra it blends together. Food tastes different separately, but nicer together for a symphony of flavors. The flavor, the feeling, you put them together to create harmony." And later we're going to talk about harmony in our lesson. But right now I want to make one of my favorite dishes for you, saucy manicotti. It was passed down by my mom. I'm not sure where she got it, but it's one of our favorite dishes. I don't make it that often because, as you'll see, there's a lot of components that go into it. Oh, and by the way, if you would rather just skip through all of this, the lesson starts right here. But for right now, I'm going to just start chopping an onion. So one of my all-time favorite movies is Moonstruck with Cher. She's in a loud Italian family. I just loved it and always wished I was Italian. But growing up, I was always told I was Irish, German, and even some Cherokee Indian. But I did a DNA test a couple of years ago and found out I'm 9% Italian. So I was super excited about that. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now let's go head over to my stovetop. Okay, over at my stovetop here, I'm just going to cook up some Italian sausage. It only calls for half a pound, but I'm going to go ahead and do the whole pound. And then it also only calls for half an onion, but I'm doing the whole onion because I don't know about you, but when I've just done half of meat and put it back in the refrigerator, a lot of times I completely forget about it. So I'm just going to cook it all up and then we'll just add half of it into our manicotti. Now this is just mild Italian sausage. I usually like to get either the sweet or you can get more of a spicy, but that usually just comes in the links and then you have to remove it from the casing, and this is just so much easier, so I like to do that. But you just cook this up a little bit until some of the oils come out, and then you add your onion. So I've got my whole chopped onion that's going to go in there. Okay, now we're just going to cook this until it's nice and browned. Nice and brown. Be sure and try to break it up into small pieces. And then it didn't say this in the recipe, in my recipe, but I always like to add a little salt and pepper to everything that I make. Oh, and I also put 1 garlic clove in there too. All right, so this is nice and brown. I'm going to turn that off, let it cool down a little bit while I go assemble everything else. Okay, now I've got everything assembled here to make our mixture that's going to go on the inside. And so I asked Alexa to play Italian music, so I have no clue what's going to come up on there. Continue, Alexa. Continue. So we'll see, but it kind of makes you feel like dancing. All right, so this is half of our mixture of our Italian sausage and onion. We've got 9 ounces of spinach that you don't have to cook it. You just get it out of the freezer, thaw, and drain it really well. Here's our chicken. Alexa, turn down the volume. She's a little loud. Here's our cooked chicken that I chopped up, and you only need 1.5 cups of that. 2 egg yolks, and these eggs are actually from my daughter who has chickens. She just lives 5 minutes away from me, and so in a future lesson, stay tuned because we're going to be at their little, we call it a farm. She's on 2 acres. She has rabbits, 3 dogs, and then lots of chickens, so that'll be a fun episode or video, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that was 2 egg yolks. I guess that's because it's the richest part of the egg, and that's what it calls for. And then we have 1/2 cup of Parmesan, and I get the good Parmesan, like from the deli. I don't go get the little, can of it. And then last of all, what's going to go in here is 1 cup of mozzarella. And you're just gonna stir that up really, really well. And then I'm gonna get a pan and we'll start doing the fun part, assembling them all. Okay, I washed my hands really well, took off my jewelry, ready to go. We're gonna give this one last mix. And then you could leave the spinach out if you wanted to, but you know, with all that other good stuff going in there, it's a great thing to add in. Get your greens in there. But one more thing I wanted to say was after I boiled my noodles and drained them in cold water, I like to put them back in this little container they come in because it helps them hold their shape, or else they can kind of flatten out, and then when you try to open them up, they will tear. So that's just like one of my little tips. Oh, I almost forgot one thing. You got to add your sauce first. Okay, so this is one thing that's not homemade. You could make your own sauce, but with everything else going on, and plus we're going to make a homemade white sauce to top this, I like to just buy a spaghetti sauce. And this is a really good one if you haven't tried it. Rouse, I think it's pronounced. It says all natural, premium, and it's a product of Italy. So what you're going to do is just add half of that in the bottom. So you just want a nice little bit of sauce for them to rest on, you know, so they don't dry out on the bottom. So that's the step I almost forgot, but it's a huge one. Okay, so now we're ready to fill these little babies.
Somebody cares. You may be the king, you may possess the world and its gold.
Okay, there we go. So the next thing you do is just pour the rest of your red sauce over, and you can just spread it out, make sure each one is covered. And then the next thing we're gonna do is go over and make a white sauce. And this is my favorite part. I think that's what makes the dish. So let's head back to my stovetop and make a white sauce real quick. Okay, to do our white sauce, we're gonna start with a roux. And to make a roux, you just add the same amount of butter and flour. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of butter. Just wait and let that melt a little bit. And since I had my butter out, it's pretty much already melted. So to that, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of flour. And this is the important part when you're making a roux. You wanna stir that in. And here's, like I said, the important part, so you don't wanna have lumps, is you slowly add in your liquid. And the liquid that we're using for this white sauce is heavy whipping cream, 1.5 cups. And sadly, I bought the small thing of whipping cream, and it's only 1 cup, so I just added the rest half and half. So that'll work too. I mean, you could even use milk, but this is just going to make it a lot richer. So here's your main thing, is just stir, stir, stir. And you don't add your cream all at once. You add it slowly, and you just keep stirring, because we don't want those lumps. And when you've gotten all of those lumps out, you can add a little more. And you know, if you don't want to add milk, you could even add like chicken broth would even work, or vegetable broth if you are vegetarian. Of course, you wouldn't be eating this meal with the chicken and the meat in it, but anyway. So you just keep stirring until that starts to thicken. And then once that starts to thicken up a little bit, you're going to add 1/3 cup of your good Parmesan, and then keep stirring. That's almost done. And then the last thing you're going to add, getting it out of my little spice cabinet here, the last thing you're going to add to this white sauce is a dash of nutmeg and a dash of garlic powder. Okay, and then you want to be careful if it starts bubbling up too much. I probably have mine on a little too high of a heat, but just don't stop stirring or it'll burn on the bottom. Okay, so I think this is pretty much good to go. So we're going to go over and pour it onto our manicotti. Okay, and then here's our last step, and the most important one, I think, is to pour that white sauce right on top of your manicotti. Be sure and get all of it. There we go. And then last of all, I'm going to cover it, and then it's going to go in the oven, a 350 oven for 35 to 40 minutes. So I've got my oven going. It hasn't preheated yet, but as soon as it does, we're going to pop this in. Okay, last step is to put this in the oven, and it bakes for 35 to 40 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 30. And then when that goes off, I'll come pull that foil off and let it bake just the last 5 to 10 minutes with the foil off. But now while it's baking, let's head into my music room so we can start our lesson. Okay, today we're going to talk about intervals. And an interval is just the distance between two notes. And so from a C to a D is an interval, from a C to a E is an interval, and they all have names. So if you just step up from one white key to the next beside it, that's a second. If you skip a note, that's a third. If you skip 2 white keys, that's a fourth. And if you skip 3 white keys, that's a fifth. And it doesn't just have to start on C. So right now I'm moving up. My hands are doing fifths. Now you can keep going. From a C to a A is a sixth. From a C to a B is a seventh. That one doesn't quite sound so good together. And then last of all, you have your octave, which we've talked about in a previous lesson. But that's all intervals are. And when you understand intervals, it's going to help you actually read music a little easier and even sight read a little easier. But now let's look at it on some music. Okay, just like I showed you on the piano, your seconds are neighboring white keys, and seconds always go from a line to a space, and they go from a line to the very next space, or they can go from a space to a line. So here we have middle C to D is a second. Here we have in the bass clef a C to a D. That's also a second. Now, if you move down to your thirds, they skip a white key, and thirds always go from a line to a line or a space to a space. And they go from a line to the very next line. Where I'm going to skip from thirds down to fifths, just so you can see the difference. So fifths also go from a line to a line, but they skip a line. Or they go from a space to a space, skipping a space. So fifths are very easy to spot, as are thirds. And then the one in between are our fourths. So fourths skip 2 white keys. They also go from a line to a space the way that seconds do, but see how you can tell the difference. It's not the very next space to it, it skips a space. Or it can go from a space to a line. And then back to your fifths, they skip 3 white keys. So that's what they look like on music. And like I said, if you get to where you can spot those, then you don't have to figure out, oh, that's a C to a E. You just know that goes up a third, so I'm going to skip a note. Now, when you start to understand intervals, you will be able to learn to read music a lot easier and to also sight read easier. So right here, remember I said if you go from a space to a space, that's a third, which means you're skipping a note. So if you know that this is a C and it's going up to the very next space, then that's an E because it skipped the space. So here we're going C, E, E, G, E. So all of these are thirds. And then same thing for the right hand. We're doing middle C, up a third, and down a third. And so I am going to show you that on the piano. Okay, the boy and the echo is in C position, which means your right hand thumb is on the middle C. If you skip 2 keys, your thumb would be on G, so your left hand pinky is on the C. And if you look at the music, that first measure is a C in the bass clef. We're going up a third again, and down a third. And then see where the echo is? Start on your middle C. We're going up in thirds. So see, when you're going up in thirds, you're just skipping the 2 line notes. Now we're on that next to last measure of the first line, back to your G, all cows eat grass. See how it goes down a third and then up a second. Okay, now we're on the next line. Down a third, up a second. And now right there where it says, can you really hear me? You can count up all cows eat, but once you're on your E, try to just do it in intervals. Up a third, down a third, down a third. Right hand starts on E, up a third, down a third, down a third, down a third. There's your middle C. All right, next line. Remember your F line between the dots. It's going up a second, down a fourth, and then the right hand just echoes that. Up a second, down a fourth. All right, next line, we're starting on an E, up a third, down a fifth, and hold it for 4 counts. Right hand, down a fourth. Left hand on the G, down a fifth. And then here's a little harmony right here. Your right hand's on E, your left hand is on G. So it's 2 different notes, but it makes a nice little harmony, and make both of them go down a third at the same time. Okay, this is a sight reading book that I recommend if you're just starting out. It's from Alfred's Basic Piano Library, and I've been able to find these on Amazon, so you should be able to also. But talking about intervals, so this is just a nice little exercise here. And if you look at A, these are all seconds. So see how it's going from a line to a line. So if you're following along here, even if you don't know offhand what this note is, if you start on your middle C, step up in seconds, then down a second, up a second, up a second, up a second. Then you can easily, as you're playing that on the piano or your keyboard, you can just follow. That's called sight reading. So rather than knowing what that note is, if you're playing along here on a C, C, D, E, D, E, F, G. And so even if you want to just pause this, and you can practice that first little line if you'd like. Now let's look at the next one. So this next one is going to combine several different intervals. So right off the bat here we have a fourth, because from a line to a line would be a third, but we're going from a line to this space. So we're skipping 2 white notes in between. So we're going from C to F. So C, up a fourth, down a fourth, up a fourth. Here you're going down a second, up a fourth. And then here's some more fourths. From G to D, we're skipping the 2 white keys, G, D, up a second, up a third, down a fifth. Because remember, if you go from a line to a line, but skip a line, that's a fifth. So from a G to a C would be a fifth. So again, if you would like to pause this here, and you can practice that. Now, next we have 2 lines in the bass clef. So remember, you're all cows eat grass, so we're starting on a C. And then instead of having to do that, all cows eat grass, oh, that's a G, you can easily look at this and say, okay, I'm going from a space to a space, and I'm skipping a space, so I'm going to go up a fifth. And so a fifth is just when you go from your pinky to your C. That's your fifth. So right off the bat, we have a fifth, C, G, G, back down to your C, C. Now we're going up a fourth, so C, F, F. From F, down a second, up a third, down a fourth, back up a fourth, and ends on a C. So from G to C, you're going down a fifth. And then our last one here, so we're starting off all fourths here. C, I'm sorry, not fourths, thirds. C, E, G, E. So that's all thirds. From E, you're stepping up a second. So now we're on F. From F, you're going down a third to your D. And again, here's some thirds. G, E, C, E. Down a second. D. Up a second. Down a third. So this is just a great little sight reading thing if you want to practice all of those. Okay, now let's talk about melody and harmony. So melody is just a sequence of several notes that are played one after another, where harmony is notes that are played simultaneously together. And just like we talked about in cooking, putting different foods together for a harmony of flavors, we can also do this in music too, putting our notes together at the same time. So intervals that are played in a melody, so they're played separately, are called melodic intervals. And if you ever hear me accidentally slip up and call these melodic intervals, it's because I was taught to say it that way as when I was young, learning piano. So for years and years, and it was only several years ago that I learned it's melodic instead of melodic. So I apologize if I ever say it wrong, but let's look at a couple of melodic intervals. So if you go from C up a second to D, that's a melodic interval. Now we have a melodic third from C to E, a line to a line, or third can also go a space to a space like this one. And then we have another second. So these are played separately, and I'll show you at the piano in just a second. But if we move down further on the page, these are your harmonic intervals. So harmonic intervals just play at the exact same time. So here, they're going to be a line to a space, and thirds would be, seconds, or thirds would be a space to a space, or a line to a line. Now notice with your seconds, they have to put it right beside it because you would not be able to fit, a D right above that C. So you just put them side by side, and with them touching like that, you know that they're played together at the same time. So here we have a harmonic third, and when you're writing thirds, you just draw it directly above it. You stack it like you're about to draw a snowman, and then we have another third, space to a space, and then here's a harmonic second. So let's head over to the piano, and we'll look at these a little further. So let's start with the melodic intervals on line 1 right there at A. Let's look at B. So we're going to go up in fourths. Hit that G again, down in fourths. Here's your up a third. So all of these are melodic right now. Now we're doing the bass clef. Up a fifth, now up a fourth. And then that last line, D. So we're starting out in thirds, down a third, there's your G, down in thirds, up in thirds, and then down a second. Okay, now we're going to look at the harmonic intervals. So, and like I said earlier, you just play them together at the same time. So a second, next is a third, then we have 2 fourths, fifth, fourth, third, second, third. And you want to be careful to play them exactly the same time. Don't let it roll. That's not the right way, so it's together at the same exact time. Okay, let's look at B, where we're doing the bass clef. Fifth. Notice the G is staying on top. So it's this note moving. Fourth, fourth, third, third, fourth. And then C, we're going to go back and forth. So we're starting with the right hand, second, second, third, left hand, second, second, third, right hand, left hand. So I'd like to close out my lesson today with a question for you, and it is, how's your Italian? And it goes right along with my theme today because I've got some manicotti baking in the oven. But if you remember in a past lesson where I taught you about music notation, that it is usually written in Italian, and that goes like across the world. So I have a worksheet for us to try and see how is your Italian. Okay, so here it is. Here's our terms that are all in Italian. So let's just go through them, and you can try to guess which one it is first and check yourself, see if you're right. So first we look at tempo. That is your rate of speed. Next, we have a ritardando. Remember, this is usually at the end of a piece, and it means to slow down. Next, we have adagio. This is one of our tempos. And when I taught you that, I said to think of a turtle just crawling along. So adagio is a slow rate of speed. Andante, think of a man just walking along. It's a walking speed. Moderato is a moderate speed, medium speed. And remember, you can combine any of these with moderato. You can have adagio, moderato, etc. And then we have fermata. Remember, fermata is our little symbol that looks like an eye with an eyebrow above it. And that is your hold sign right here. Next, we have allegro. This is another rate of speed. And let's see, I'm looking for it. Where is it? It's fast right here. Allegro. Oh, right across. Da capo. That means to go back to the beginning. And when you have a da capo, a lot of times it'll say da capo al fine. So that means go back to the beginning and play until you get to the end. Okay, a little technical difficulty there. Next, we have our crescendo. And so remember, crescendo and diminuendo are opposite of each other. The easiest way to think of it, just that word crescendo makes me think of thunder. And so that means to gradually get louder. Here it is. And your diminuendo, think of the word diminish, to get smaller or gradually softer. We have a mezzo forte, moderately loud. We have piano, which is soft. We have forte, which is loud. And then these two are the opposite of each other also. So you have legato, which means smoothly connected, staccato, detached, and a tempo. So this is, usually you'll see this if they give you, say an adagio, and then a little bit later it says a tempo. That just means to go back to your regular rate of speed. I'm going to knock this over again. So anyway, let me know in the comments below, how was your Italian? Now, I thought it would be fun to end with a song that I grew up playing. I think I learned it from friends at school. You may have learned to play it too, but it's called Chopsticks. And what's fun about Chopsticks is you can use your two fingers, just like that's why it's called Chopsticks, but it's all intervals. So start on an F and a G and play a second 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep the G, move down 1. So now we're playing a third. Now you're going to skip the A and come up here. This is actually a 7th. And then from a 7th, we do an octave. Then your hands are just going to move together and you repeat it. Now those were harmonic intervals. You can also do them back and forth and make them melodic. The next part of it is we're going to come down in thirds, but start on a C and an E. Trickier, and then it just goes back to that first part again. So this song was always fun to play as a duet. And so you have somebody doing the left hand and somebody doing the right hand, what I just did. The left hand is really easy. You just hit a G and a G chord twice. So, and notice we're playing our chord, and now that you know about intervals, a chord is made up of a third and a fifth. And we are playing them melodically. So this would be harmonically, but we're playing them melodically. So I was hoping to have one of my my grandchildren over today so that we can play this as a duet. But since I don't, I figure I'm going to play both parts for you. So when I was in high school, I kind of gave myself that challenge to, since if I didn't have a friend over to play it with me, then I thought I'm going to try both parts for myself by myself. And so instead of the 2 fingers here, you're going to have to use your right hand to do this part and the left hand here. Okay. You have fun with that. Well, that concludes our lesson today, and I hope you liked it. If you did, I hope that you'll hit that like button, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And last of all, if you'd like to get notifications every time I upload a new video, be sure and ring that bell. And now, before I say goodbye, let's head into the kitchen because I'm smelling something good that I think has to come out of the oven. Okay, time is up. Ready to get this out of the oven. I wish y'all could smell how it smells in here right now. It smells amazing. All right, so this is dinner tonight. And all I have to do is just serve it with a nice loaf of bread because it already has its veggies in there. Let me let you take a peek at this. If I was Giada, I would take one and cut it up and take a bite and tell you how it tasted, but I'm not Giada, so I will end just saying bon appetit, and I hope to see you next Monday. Thanks for watching.